All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? Rosemary, would you like to kick us off?
Thank you, Rob, and welcome everybody. I'm looking around this group and seeing so many people who are doing so much good work, and just want to welcome you to our open table where we bring all our experiences, whatever they are, together and try to connect and make and commit ourselves every day to working to make a community where everyone has access to safe and secure housing. So we gratefully honor and acknowledge that we rest on the traditional lands of the Puyallup people who have lived on this land since the beginning of time and continue to steward this place today. On this federal holiday of Veterans Day, we honor the service of many tribal members in protecting the democracy that often has not lived up to its promise for them of guaranteeing equal rights and respect for all. Since this is a federal holiday, we'll be probably missing some of our partners, but we decided to meet for a shorter time to keep our attention on the ever-challenging weather, the continuing trauma of sweeps, the lack of real shelter for so many in our community. So just a word about this federal holiday. You may remember that Veterans Day was originally called Armistice Day, observed on November 11th, 1918, the day World War I ended. In 1919, President Woodrow Wilson celebrated Armistice Day for the first time, and in 1938, Congress made it an official holiday, federal holiday. And following a grassroots campaign in 1954, the holiday's name in the US was changed to Veterans Day to honor the veterans of all the wars the US has fought, though it remains Armistice Day on the European continent. After a brief period when this was celebrated on the fourth Monday of October to ensure a long weekend for workers, in 1975, President Gerald Ford turned it back to the original November 1st date to mark the actual anniversary of the war that was idealistically called the War to End All Wars, which didn't happen, of course. I mention this history to honor the service of those who faced horrible conditions and horrific choices in pursuit of widely shared visions of freedom and democracy. Especially acknowledge those veterans we meet who are living on the streets and in homeless shelters. Last week, Housing Urban Development published data from the most recent point in time count stating that on a single night in January 2022, there were 33,136 veterans experiencing homelessness in the United States, down from 37,252 in 2020. Overall, this represents a 55% reduction in veterans experiencing homelessness since 2010. We know the point in time count is an undercount, but the successes of ending veterans' homelessness are important and should be celebrated. In our area, we honor the work of Monique Brown of FOB Hope and her team at the Veterans Village, who in the short time the village has been open, have assisted more than 20 of those who have been residents of the village to secure permanent housing. This is really wonderful. And to center our work today, I have a thought about the concept of armistice, the original name for this day. Armistice, a ceasing of hostilities, a truce, a negotiated recognition or a settlement, a willingness to stop the fighting, at least for now, to take a break from angry acts and try to imagine peaceful coexistence. I was thinking about how much we could all use an armistice after this anxiety-producing election week. I know the constant political hostilities and the sensory assault of negative advertising have dulled my spirit, worn me down, made it harder to be generous and open to the task before us of fighting valiantly in a war against exclusion, seeking the possibilities of peace and safe and secure housing for all. So today we can and should celebrate ourselves, breathe deeply, and carry on together. So welcome all. And there are some of you who are new, but I'm just going to be brief to say we really love having you here, and we're going to give you a moment to introduce yourself if you wish to. But as we operate here, we ask that people use the raise hand function when they're wanting to be recognized, that we keep ourselves on mute when we aren't speaking, and that if we're doing other things that could be distracting, to turn off our video as well. And we have a list of norms for ourselves as we operate together. And one of the things we use very well in this group is the chat as a place to make connections with people. So if you speak and have lots more to say, it might be a good idea to put some of your stuff in the chat, and that will encourage other people to speak as well. We also encourage you to look at our webpage if you're new, and the About Us part of the webpage, you'll find out more about how we operate. So with that, I'd like to invite anybody new to say your name, and if you're associated with the group, let us know that, and then we'll have Rob or I will give you a call. I give you a call, give you a way I guess, introduce you to say your stuff. So go ahead. Raise your hand if you'd like to introduce yourself. All right, Jennifer, go ahead. You're on mute.
Hi, I'm here in the capacity of my church. So we are just kind of ramping up and starting to get going here, and try to help out with the community and help out with this problem. So yeah, so that's why I'm here. And I'm just learning. So I'm gonna pick up with wherever you guys are at. And my name's Jennifer, and reach out to me. I'll put my contact information in the chat, and then you guys can reach out to me if you need to. Okay.
Welcome, Jennifer. It's a really wonderful project to be working on. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we won't keep on this long. It's just if you are new and would like to put your name or information about you in the chat, we do save that. It's available for you to save immediately after the event, or it is posted on our webpage shortly after we meet, within a few days usually. So we can get back in touch with you if that's something you'd like. So Rob.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you for centering us on why we're here and on the importance of this day. Let's get started with the segment that we do every week, which is talking about creating a space for people to share what they're seeing on the streets this week, with a focus on, of course, this week, we have ongoing sweeps happening within the city of Tacoma. If you're aware of sweeps outside of Tacoma, please let us know about that. I'm not aware, but we're not always alerted regarding sweeps that happen in places like Fife or outside in the county. We're still working on getting the proper notification for those things. But we're also in the midst of cold weather. So we're going to talk about cold weather specifically a little bit later, but feel free if you have details related to the cold weather response that you want to share either now or just a bit later. So I open the floor to whoever wants to give updates about what they're seeing on the streets. Go ahead, Teresa.
So St. Leo's is putting up fencing today on G Street, and the sweep has pretty much removed almost all of the tents. There are still some people who are staying here, but the anxiety of the people who are still in tents there is palpable. And there was a huge issue this morning around, I'm not even going to tell you because it's just, it's total chaos. But what I recognized is that there was one, I did call 911 because one of the campers asked me to, who was being harmed. And I thought about all of the workers standing around who no one was calling 911, even though this woman was asking them to, and how much of that attitude affects so many people. They see someone in this condition and they just imagine that it's a mental health thing, or I don't know what they imagine, but just wanted to put that out there, that it's a reality that people who are homeless are not necessarily taken seriously.
Thank you, Teresa. Zara?
Yeah, so I just wanted to share some quick updates on 34th and Pacific. I also wanted to mention, I have been putting together a resource of Richard's older posts. Those go back a little bit over a year. They're extremely helpful because it allows you to see the patterns in where encampments are shifting and forming, as well as to get a really clear sense of where the city has been promising, in most cases for over a year, oh, like we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So it's a really useful tool for accountability as well as for us in trying to do outreach in cold weather to figure out. Richard has the most complete list of encampments that I've seen so far. So I'd be happy to share that archive with anyone. But at 35th and Pacific, well, 34th, a lot of the folks who have been swept have ended up there. So I've personally seen it increase. I would say in October it was at about 70 people. Now it's at around 90 people. I know that Caleb sent out that email saying that the sanctioned campground wouldn't be open until the 16th, which is interesting because they're still, as far as I know, planning on sweeping on the 15th, which I think we all know at this point that the city is in constant violation of Martin v. Boise, but we haven't really quite figured out how to hold them accountable to that, which is fair because it is like trying to pin down jellyfish. Anyways, I would love to see if there was any way to get that sweep delayed, but I'm not putting a ton of faith in it. I think the true issue then, and this relates to cold weather outreach as well, is that so 50 of those folks ideally will be able to go into the sanctioned campground once that opens. But that means that between the sweeps on G and the sweeps there, I mean, that's probably upwards of 100 people who are going to be what Richard refers to as ones and twos. And I would really love if we could focus in our cold weather outreach on maybe trying to coordinate to come up with a plan to be able to really use our collective, I don't know, information, resources, power to be able to access those folks. And then for people in the Spanaway Parkland area, I suspect many of those people will be coming over to here. And so that is also a concern because we have very few social services available and a very large police presence. So I think I'll stop now. I see lots of hands up.
Thanks, Zara. Good context. Jeffrey.
Good morning. Had a good meeting yesterday at the new site on 35th and Pacific. Again, phase 1 is only 50 people in tents. There's a lot of room there, and the city and TRM have not said what phase 2 is as of yet. Might be tiny homes, who knows? Yes, the people at 34th and Pacific are concerned, and they're very concerned because the list, the magic list, has been pretty chaotic, and TRM won't cough it up. The police HEAL team will not cough it up. Nobody knows who actually gets the magic ticket to get into the camp. The city has not provided a map for where the other campers can go yet. And they're all concerned about the 10-block radius. It's the 10-block radius, as I look at the map, puts everybody else into residential neighborhoods. A little bit in the south end, mostly in the mid area and north. And that's the information I will pass on to the campers at 34th and Pacific and any other camp that gets swept between now and whenever. But, you know, it's not a good situation right now, but thanks for listening.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And it was good to see you out at that tour of the new site yesterday, along with others. So Patricia, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to speak on like how people handle the cold. Particularly, this is one idea that I have, the hot hands and the toe hands. If you sleep with those directly on you to keep yourself warm, you get burnt. So I've been thinking about like maybe churches or some groups to make like sleeves for them, enough to have them warm at night, but not to burn them. Also, like education more towards like fires are happening, utilizing sanitizers and things like that. So how do you mitigate like the warmth factor? I've seen that because it's turned cold quite quickly. But that's all I just wanted to say, just about like the hot hands and the things, if maybe that can be something. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Keith?
Good morning. I just want to reintroduce myself. My name is Keith Onka. I'm a social worker with the Virginia Mason Franciscan Health System. And in Tacoma, that's St. Joseph Medical Center and St. Clair Hospital. And I just want to reach out to Teresa. You know, if the individual that you were aware of that got that we called 911 for got sent to St. Joe's and not Tacoma General, I will give you my contact information, and you could always reach out to me if you think that I can relay any messages to our emergency department care management team to intervene. I don't know if it was a behavioral health crisis or a medical crisis. You know, we have access to some medical respite beds at Nativity House that not everybody else has access to. Jan Rumbeck, Joanne Iverson have my cell phone number. I ask that you use it judiciously, but I'll certainly share it with you in a private chat, Teresa.
Thank you, Keith. And Zoe.
Hey everyone. So I responded to Caleb's email and got an email back. I'm just gonna go ahead and read that. Hi, HEAL will be on site as planned to begin encampment removal at 34th and Pacific on November 15th. Staff will focus on removal of debris, towing of vehicles, and notification of individuals anticipating entry into 35th. That there will be a brief delay, as well as providing storage bins for anyone preparing to move. We do have a list of individuals in the encampment and have worked closely with TRM staff to ensure a smooth transition from the encampment to the new shelter location. So not happy with that response. Obviously, I plan to be on site on Tuesday to watch what goes down, film and stuff. If anybody else would like to do that, would love to see some other people out there. What else? Yeah, that's the really big thing on my mind. Rob, you mentioned talking about the spreadsheet. I'll do that whenever that's appropriate, but just wanted to get that response from Caleb out there. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. And a couple more hands shot up. Ed.
One of the things that occurs to me is in the past, we've asked Caleb for lists of names of people in encampments, and he said that they don't have the lists of names. Well, they have to put the lists going into the encampment at 35th or 34th and Pacific, so they've got to have lists of names. We need these lists for tracking purposes, so we can keep track of where people are going and how they're doing. So not exactly sure how to approach that other than with a lot of anger. So anybody who has an idea, give me a yell.
Thanks, Ed. And Jay.
I got a response separate from email from one of the HEAL teams stating that they have 27 people on a list. That is from, I'm assuming, August and September when they were starting the build. That seems to be the thing that we're not seeing is the long term of the situation. These people are making a list, but it's 6 months from the time that we talk to them. And the people at the encampments, when you're on the street, lose time. And by the time that we talk to them, nobody's talked to them because they forgot that in August somebody didn't put them on the list, because they're put on lists every day. So we're not necessarily seeing actions in the right sequence to know what people are actually doing. Second of all, we're doing inclement weather. I just came out of that one. There was only 4 of us in this last meeting, but we did speak about a few things. Suit ban and communication with Church Transit about trying to get us, I spoke with Ivan to open up at least free ride shares if they can to shelters on inclement weather days. We understand we may not be able to get hot buses, and otherwise they just don't have the staff for the buses currently. They just don't. And that is the same with King, and that is the same with community transit through Olympia, and that is the same statewide.
Thanks, Jay. And I was curious if there was going to be many people attending the cold weather meeting this morning, given that a bunch of us who usually attended are actually in this meeting.
Well, are those meetings still going on?
They added a meeting today, and then there's a meeting again on Monday morning. And
Tuesday.
Oh, they added Tuesday as well.
It's not on the calendar, but it's been planned for.
Okay.
And then they come back from vacation after Tuesday.
Right. All right. So let's so as you can tell, this morning's meeting's a little bit fluid. We're crossing over topics right now, which is great. I did want to shift to do the quick need and share section of today's meeting before we talk about the cold weather response more pointedly. Christine, did you want to say a word about the need and share?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Hey, everyone. I'm Christine Lindquist. I'm a community volunteer, and we are trying to help. I'm trying to help track, and other people are involved with this too, supplies related to cold weather outreach specifically. And so we have a list that in a spreadsheet that Zoe developed, and I'll post it in the chat. If you have items that you need for outreach, please put them in the chat with your contact information, or you can put them in the spreadsheet. There's a tab specifically that says outreach, supply, need, and share. And we'll just try to kind of keep this going so that we can connect people who are doing outreach with the items that they need. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Christine. And this seems like a good opportunity after Jay asks her question to transition over to have Zoe talk about the spreadsheet she's been maintaining. So Jay, what's your question?
It's actually for Zoe to kind of headway that direction. So
okay.
It's Zoe, I was wondering, I saw the tabs, is there one for the locations that people are actually visiting so that they can say, hey, we are going to these sites, and that way we can start tracking them on the map too. And if we start using the 2 tools together, that can unify us very quickly.
Yeah, so the first tab on the spreadsheet is for exactly that. No one has been using it yet, but I would love for people to make sure we know who's getting seen, and mostly, like, even if people aren't going to visit the camp, if people can write down the camps they know about, so that people that are looking to go out but don't know where to go can see that it's, you know, been several days since someone went somewhere.
So one quick question, Zoe.
Yeah.
How widely are you wanting to make this spreadsheet available to the broader audience in the full coalition? Because I know I don't believe it's out to everyone at this point.
Yeah, so I am happy for this to go out to the coalition. I don't want it to be public right now.
Right.
It is access, open access if you have the link. So I've been kind of sharing that.
Got it.
You know, the other thing I want to mention is that Courtney and Lived Experience Coalition and TMAC are have a kind of shared storage space that Courtney has access to that's in Hilltop. We're having all of our supplies that aren't going directly out sent there, and we're getting, you know, several packages off our wish list every day, and lots of stuff at our drop-off locations. If anybody would like to use that space to, you know, if you're done with a run and not going out for a few days, drop your extra stuff off. If you need something, go check it out. The only thing I don't have is like a running inventory. I might try and like make that happen on Sunday or something, but it changes so quickly that you know, hard to keep track of. I don't know if Courtney will be available to like check if you call and say, is this thing there? But contact me for the address and Courtney's number to coordinate a pickup or a drop off. But yeah, really hoping we can get this central spot and really make sure we're sharing our resources. Because yeah, we're getting way more than we can get out every day.
Great. Well, thank you for creating the spreadsheet. If you want to drop the link, I think
Christine
it's
dropped the link in the chat.
Yeah. And just so you know, I have not, because I knew you wanted to have, I wanted to make sure we had an intentional conversation about how the link was being shared. I'm not aware of it being published anywhere at this point. So those of us who are here in the meeting have the link. There's a select number of folks who have been at the outreach, the cold weather outreach meetings, who had a link to it. But again, just kind of keep it a little bit quiet, but we want it to be a useful resource for folks. Jay, I see your hand up.
The thing I was going to say completely blew my mind. Oh, it's First Methodist Church that Courtney is talking about. It's the center that we've all been speaking about for the LEC for the last 6 months or so. And so that's the location, that's 7th and Tacoma, and that really provides a nice central location for us. Likewise with the link, I know that we all worry about safety and otherwise, but the people here want to help, and hopefully all of us are willing to keep this to ourselves. And we have to remember that if we don't start sharing this information, like a map, like these things, and cooperating with each other, we can't be successful in the mission we have together.
Very well said. Thank you, Jay. So, are there other things that folks want to share about the cold weather response? We are going to go into a breakout here shortly, just so that folks have an opportunity to share what they're doing during the cold weather, but we're not quite there yet. Zara, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, one thing I have been realizing after reading a lot of Richard's posts is that we also need to keep in mind how we can maintain our efforts and keep them sustainable through at least March. I think we've all been part of enough things to know that at the beginning or the sense of emergency, it's very easy to kind of coordinate resources as well as collect community donations. But realistically, not only do we need to figure out how to keep this going through March, I think it would also be wise in about January, once we have a good system figured out, to start thinking about how we can plan for summer. Because you can kind of see, looking back through the data, that for roughly the last year and a half, every time there is inclement weather, we kind of pressure the city sits on their heels until we're in the middle of the crisis, and then we all have to scramble and do things like we're doing now, to try to come up with as many resources as possible. So I think this is really a fantastic time for us to really work out our own intra-community coordination, as well as starting to figure out how we can utilize other resources, people who are not at the coalition, how we can kind of expand our network, so that we can really be on top of it. I think that unfortunately we really need to accept at this point that the bulk of the work is going to be done by us and by new people who are brought in, rather than the city. And I know that we all have so much potential to be able to do that, and I know that we all get so frustrated hearing those same canned responses. You guys said, you got three of you got the exact same response from Caleb. So at this point, it kind of feels like we're on a hamster wheel. But I don't think that we have to do that. I think that we have enough power here and enough resources and coordination that we can really start to make that happen. So I just kind of wanted to put that on folks' radar, that while we obviously have immediate needs that need to be taken care of, it's also good to be planning not only for January through March, but for hot weather, with climate changes starting quite a bit earlier. So I think this is a beautiful chance to really iron out that coordination network.
Thank you, Zara. Zoe, your hand's up.
Call on Jay. I completely forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, Jay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking most of this meeting and I will be quiet after this. I think that sometimes we need to work on asking questions. There's been a lot of work that's been done, and sometimes that hamster wheel is retrying the same thing that's been done before, but we didn't talk about what happened, the repercussions of it, and the decisions that were made afterwards. And it is something that I've seen, and that I even participated when I started. I was like, hey, let's do this. I was really gung-ho. And then, about a month later, I realized, a lot of these people have been working at this for a really long time and have tried a lot of this. Maybe you need to come at it from a different view. But asking questions and communication is so key to compromise and collaboration, especially with a group of this size. And yes, 6 months lead time is great, but that was also brought up in a meeting recently. And plans have been initiated to start working in that direction instead of doing emergency response. Emergency intermittent response from the city and the county are relatively new. We've had it for the last, 2-3 years, Rob?
Yeah, especially the last couple.
It's not drastically great, but it is a drastic improvement from the last couple of years before that, when there was nothing. And so we're in the baby steps of development of community building, and you're part of it. But we have to work together, and we have to know what other people did so that we're not stepping on toes or biting each other or wasting time or causing trauma or, 1,000 other things, down to just frustrating ourselves with hearing it from people being irritated and frustrated because we've all tried it and we don't know what else to do. So now's the time for solution making, asking questions, and building each other up and working together.
Thank you for that perspective, Jay. That's really helpful. Zoe, did you remember what you wanted to say?
Just, obviously it's my day off. I'm not here on behalf of the health department, but they're deactivating their response. I don't know if they're planning on reactivating if there's another severe weather. Like we all know there will be. The department internally is going to be collecting clothes and supplies for the entire winter. And so they'll be distributing that through Courtney, Zara, and I. So that'll be in that storage location pretty regularly. I had something to say in response to what Jay said, but I do not remember, and I don't want to take up more time. So
thank you, Zoe. And Jenny, I see your note in the chat about sanitizer that you have available.
Yeah, I can just pop in really quick. So I work for a toy company now, but we have some other, various items. We stopped working with one of our manufacturers and we have pallets of sanitizer, and it's the little individual packets. So individual packets of gel and then individual sanitizing wipes. I'll check on the amount of stock and then I'll send an email out to the coalition. But if there's pallets left, is there anyone who has storage space to take that amount of volume for a donation like that?
The LEC space can probably hold it depending on how many pallets. Like 50 is
Okay.
different.
Yeah, I don't think we have 50 left, but it could be up to like maybe 4 or 5 pallets worth.
That should work.
Okay, I will check on the stock and I'll send an email out to the coalition, and then anybody can grab back on that and say, hey, we can take it. And then I'm happy to coordinate getting that out to folks, and we'll figure out logistics and transportation and whatnot. Because I just think that this group would be the best place to donate that, because I know y'all would be able to utilize that for sure.
Thank you, Jenny. And Jeffrey, why don't you wrap us up for this section?
I'd be happy to, thank you. I've been hearing from some people, well, you may have done this in the past or whatever. What we're seeing here is a new generation coming in and working on this problem. I've been at it for 10, 12 years through Associated Ministries. Various people have been at this for a number of years, but so many of you are younger and haven't. And don't be shy. Don't be afraid to come out with ideas and share them with us. We don't know it all. We don't. And things are changing on a regular basis. So for all of you who are a bit younger than me, don't be shy. Let us hear your stories. Let us hear your ideas, because they can help us all, that we can help so many people who are homeless right now. We can help, and we need your ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. So let's move on. The main other thing that I had on our agenda for today is I wanted to have an opportunity for us to have breakout conversations. But let's start that with the review from our last breakout. I know it was shorter than usual because we had a meeting get away from us again. But Timothy, would you like to share your summary from last week?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I dropped it in the chat a little while ago, if you want to scroll back for it. Yeah, it was a briefer discussion than we generally have. It was like right at the end of the meeting. So we had like 5 or 10 minutes to talk and get notes in. So just to briefly summarize, what we talked about was, we'd been hearing about the Dignity Village proposal and have had some presentations on that. And we were looking for feedback on that. And there was a good deal of feedback, which I arranged here. And, just to briefly go over it, again, the importance of listening to people with lived experience and putting together a project like that. And, the feeling that that lived experience voices should have been included in this project earlier on, and that's a priority going forward. A number of concerns about the land itself, particularly it being wetlands and complications that may arise from that. a number of concerns that were related to the ongoing nature of the funding for the thing, particularly operations funding, concerns about the viability of that going forward. Also some concerns about it being classified as permanent supportive housing, and some thoughts about some things people might not have considered around that. Again, some concern about how oversight is going to work and how it's going to scale up as the site develops. Concerns about insufficient outreach to the neighborhood around this site, and also concern about just how long this is going to take. You know, the quote that I wrote down is, we can't put all our eggs in a basket that takes 5 years to build. There's a real disconnect people are feeling between the urgency of the moment and the timeline for getting this project off the ground. And then there was a sort of a big, I don't know, sort of a theoretical concern around the frame of homelessness not being a housing problem, but a lack of community problem. I think that there's broad agreement with that in general, but it also sort of flips over into something that could be interpreted differently from how it's met. And so there's some concern around that. So briefly, those are the things that came up. It sounds like people were being super, super critical of this project, which I don't really read as the case. I think there's broad support for this project, but you know, when you put the concerns in a row that came up during the discussion group, it seems like we're all kind of freaked out about it, but there's lots of time to figure this out.
Thank you, Timothy, and thank you as always for pulling the summary together and sharing it with all of us. So Zara, you had a question before we go into the breakouts?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little note of positivity. I've actually been talking to folks in the Spanaway area about the project, and a lot of people here are surprisingly excited about it. And I've already been able to get some good community support in terms of folks who would be really interested in like volunteering there, helping to steward the farm space. And then in regards to concerns about the wetlands, I have been talking to, I'm currently in an ecological restoration program specifically focused around wetlands. And there's actually a lot of really interesting things that we could do to not only be able to improve that site from an ecological perspective, but that could also potentially translate into jobs for folks at the site. So anybody who's concerned about that, I think it's a super valid concern. And I just want you to know that that along with the concerns about lived experience, they are also doing a presentation to the Lived Experience Coalition next Wednesday, I believe. So some of those concerns are already being addressed, which is nice because so many of us just give our concerns to the city and they disappear. So yeah, good stuff.
Thank you, Zara. So let's shift to the topic of this week's breakout conversation. And I wanted to carve out 15 minutes for folks to share in small breakout rooms what they are planning to do or are currently doing for supporting people who are living outdoors right now. This information, please have a note taker in your room so that folks can share the notes when they come back to the chat, put them in the chat. The information that you provide will help us build out the spreadsheet that we're doing for outreach that can be used for filling in gaps in what we're seeing happen on the streets right now as it's starting to grow cold for our winter. So without further ado, I will send everybody off to breakout rooms, and we'll be back here at 10 to wrap up the meeting. Welcome back, everyone. Just whoever was a note taker in your room, please paste the notes when you have them pulled together in the chat so that Timothy can work his magic and create another summary for next week. We've only got a couple more things on the agenda for this week before we move to a planning meeting for those who have the capacity to do that. I briefly wanted to offer some advocacy updates. There's not a whole lot to talk about, but the city of Tacoma, during its study session, they have a joint study session this coming Tuesday at noon that you can find the link on the city website. That is a joint study session with Tacoma Public Utilities. And one of the main topics of the conversation is the legislative agenda for the city going into the upcoming legislative session, both in Olympia, and I believe they're talking about both state and federal legislative priorities. So obviously those documents show where the city of Tacoma is putting its energy and focus. And so it's worthwhile, if you have the time, to either tune in live or just kind of listen to the archive after it's posted. I don't believe the city of Tacoma has a Tuesday night meeting next week. I think it's one of their weeks that they have the meeting off, but at least I didn't see an agenda posted. I see Sally shaking her head, so I'm probably wrong, but I didn't see an agenda posted.
The 15th, Rob?
Yeah.
The 15th, there's a meeting on the 22nd, and the budget is on both of those agendas. So if you're interested in how the city's spending its money, which is the other way you can understand their priorities, then these next two city council meetings are really crucial.
Yep. So thank you for that, Sally. So those are two opportunities. And of course, when it comes to the budget, if it's on the agenda, there's an opportunity to make public comment about it. Public comment is accepted during the Tuesday night meetings, not during the study session. So there is that. And I also wanted to remind folks who have an interest, especially related to the cold weather response and issues like safe parking. The Safe Sites for All committee meets every Monday morning at noon. Well, I guess it's not morning. Mondays at noon on Zoom. The link is on the pchomeless.org website. So if you have an interest in attending that meeting, join us on Monday. And the only other thing on our agenda for today is I wanted to carve out some time for folks to make announcements. So anything that would be good for the 41 folks in the room to hear, please feel free to unmute yourself and share your announcement with the group.
Hi.
Hi, Jan.
Sorry, I forgot to raise my hand.
You're good.
This is Jan with LASA, and somebody gifted us with a lot of coffee makers and several mini fridges. And if you're interested, please email me. It's Jan, Janne at lasawa.org. And I'm going to try to put that in the comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. Anyone else with announcements they'd like to share? Yeah, Teresa.
So I put in the chat, pardon, I put a little flyer in the chat. This is a kind of introductory thing about homelessness that we've done with a number of churches and faith groups, but also with community members. And for some reason, it didn't get up on the Associated Ministries website when it was supposed to. So it's next Tuesday, and it may not be a huge group of people who join us, but that makes it a great opportunity if you would like to have a more smaller conversation about this. It's a training that Rosemary and I do together, and we are inviting other folks to join to talk about some of the issues that are, if you're especially anybody in this group who's relatively new to this, it's a good place to get a little grounding on it so that you can join in a more robust way the rest of the conversation. So everyone is welcome. It's not really bent toward any sort of faith-based agenda. It's just that Associated Ministries is hosting our registration. Thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. And Patricia.
This is in regards to Veterans Day today. So there's a Veterans Day celebration specific for veterans, active duty military, and their families at the Museum of Glass between like 3 and 5. But there's also like they're gonna have like a color guard ceremony, hot shop hero certificates. There's different programming. So just in celebration of that day. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. And Zoe.
I just saw a few things in the chat about families and want to remind folks to be very careful with information about where families are at. If CPS gets called on folks, they frequently will lose custody of their children, which does no good for anyone. That happened around the People's Park sweep where Elizabeth Pauley personally called the cops and called CPS on a mother that just had a child visiting. She ended up losing custody. So yeah, please be extremely careful with who you tell about knowing where families are.
Thank you, Zoe. And Patricia again.
I just sort of, Zoe brought up safety and security. I was bringing this up in the small group. The level of weapons, homemade weapons, and the danger and drugs out there, I don't have to explain this to a lot of people, is extremely, extremely high, and it's changing on a dime. And I just want people to be careful when good intentions and good heartedness don't have safety practices with it. So try to always have like 3 people to watch your back if somebody has to go to the bathroom or talking to somebody. There's been in my own outreach a couple of circumstances, a guy was completely calm, talking, and next thing you know, he pulled out a like an IPA can and just chucked it, you know what I mean? And so it's just changing. And I just wanted to remind people for their own safety and security. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. And Carrie.
Hi, Teresa asked me to speak this into the room. Just a reminder for everyone that next month DSHS has posted, due to the government's emergency orders expiring, food benefits will be having some significant cuts. The average person, if they were receiving full benefits, was receiving an extra $95 a month. And so they've applied for something federally, but aren't sure if it will be approved yet. Maybe somebody here has more information on that, but there's a strong possibility that a lot of people will be having significant benefit cuts next month.
Thank you, Carrie. And Courtney, why don't you close this out?
Thanks. I know that there's been talk about how like this is just the first cold weather and it'll also likely get worse. But I also want to point out we had 85-degree weather and then the next week we had 55-degree weather. And so people have a fall to prep for winter. And I think that it might be hitting people a little bit harder. Like there's one encampment I go to and some of the people are still in like t-shirts because they haven't gotten the necessary supplies for cold weather. We did not have a real September, October. We had 3 Augusts. So this cold snap is the first of many and not the worst, but my ex-husband, who is a groundskeeper, he doesn't hate the hottest day of the summer. He hates the first hot day of spring. It's that transition time. That's the worst day for him, is the first hot day. And this is the first cold. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. All right, so I want to thank everybody for attending today on what for many people is a holiday. I wish everybody a safe weekend, a good Veterans Day, if you're able to take the time off after this. And as always, we will continue to hold this room open, and in about 5 minutes, those who have the capacity can do some planning for upcoming coalition meetings. But if you can't stay for that, I definitely understand. So wish everybody a good weekend, and we'll see you all next Friday.
Thanks, everyone.
And I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Sounds good.